Hey everybody! Welcome to another Storytime with Miss Megan. For the next few videos, we'll be reading fairy tales by the Grimm brothers, which were written hundreds of years ago. Now there's no pictures in this story, so I want you to use your imagination as I'm reading, and at the end, draw your own picture of what you saw. And as always, you can click the link in the description below to download the worksheet that goes along with today's story. Let's get started. This story is called The Frog King. In old times, when wishing still helped one, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, which had seen so much, was astonished whenever it shone in her face. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest was a well. And when the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the side of the cool fountain. And when she was dull, she took a golden ball and threw it up on high and caught it. And this ball was her favorite plaything. Now it so happened that on one occasion, the princess's golden ball did not fall into the little hand which she was holding up for it, but on to the ground beyond, and rolled straight into the water. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes, but it vanished, and the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. On this she began to cry, and cried louder and louder, and could not be comforted. And as thus she lamented, someone said to her, "What ails thee, king's daughter? Thou weep so that even a stone would show pity." She looked round to the side from whence the voice came, and saw a frog stretching forth its thick, ugly head from the water. "Ah, old water splasher, is it thou?" she said. "I am weeping for my golden ball which has fallen into the well." "Be quiet and do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help thee, but what wilt thou give me if I bring thy plaything up again?" "Whatever thou wilt have, dear frog," she said. "My clothes, my pearls and jewels, and even the golden crown which I am wearing." The frog answered, "I do not care for thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, or thy golden crown. But if thou wilt love me, and let me be thy companion and playfellow, I will sit by thee at thy little table, and eat off thy little golden plate, and drink out thy little cup, and sleep in thy little bed. If thou wilt promise me this, I will go down below, and bring thee thy little golden ball up again." "Oh yes," she said, "I promise thee all thou wishes, if thou wilt but bring me my ball back again." She, however, thought, "How silly the frog does talk. He lives in the water with other frogs and croaks, and can be no friend to any human being." But the frog, when he had received this promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming up again with the ball in his mouth, and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see her pretty plaything once more, and picked it up and ran away with it. Wait, said the frog. "Take me with thee. I can't run as fast as thou." But what did it help him to scream his croak after her as loudly as he could? She did not listen to it, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back into his well again. The next day, when she had seated herself at the table with the king and all his men, and was eating from her little golden plate, something came creeping, splish splash, up the marble staircase, and when it got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." She ran to see who was outside, but when she opened the door, there sat the frog in front of it. Then she quickly slammed the door, sat down to dinner again, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently, and said, "My child, what art thou so afraid of? Is there a giant outside who wants to carry thee away?" "Ah, no," replied she, "it is no giant, but a disgusting frog." "What does a frog want with thee?" "Ah, dear father, yesterday as I was in the forest sitting by the well, playing, my golden ball fell into the water, and I cried, and the frog brought it out again for me, and because he so insisted, I promised him that he should be my friend. But I never thought that he would be able to come out of his water, and now he is outside there and wants to come in." In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." "Do you not know what you said to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." Then said the king, "Well, you promised. Go and let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her step by step to her chair. There he sat and cried, "Lift me up beside thee." She delayed until at last the king told her to do it. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table. And when he was on the table, he said, "Now push thy little golden plate nearer to me so that we may eat together." She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. The frog enjoyed what he ate, but almost every mouthful he took choked her. At length he said, "I have eaten and am satisfied. Now I'm tired. Carry me to thy little room and make thy little bed ready, and we will both lie down and go to sleep." The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty clean little bed. But the king grew angry and said, "He helped you when you were in trouble. He should not be despised by you." So she took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. But when she was in bed, he crept to her and said, "I am tired. I want to go to sleep as well. Lift me up, or I will tell your father." Then she was terribly angry, and took him and threw him with all her might against the wall. "Now thou will be quiet, terrible frog," said she. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son with beautiful, kind eyes. He by her father's will was now her dear friend and husband. Then he told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself, and that tomorrow they would go together into his kingdom. They went to sleep. The next morning, when the sun woke them, a carriage came driving up with 8 white horses, which had white ostrich feathers on their heads, and were harnessed by golden chains. And behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Faithful Henry had been so unhappy when his master was changed into a frog, that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid around his heart in case it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to take the young king into his kingdom. Faithful Henry helped them both in, and was full of joy because of its king's return. And when they had driven part of a way, the king's son heard a cracking behind them, as if something had broken. So he turned around and cried, "Henry, the carriage is breaking!" "No, master, it is not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in my great pain when you were a frog and stuck in the well." Again and once again, while they were on their way, something cracked, and each time the king's son thought it was the carriage breaking. But it was only the bands which were springing from the heart of Faithful Henry, because his master was set free and was happy. I hope you liked today's fairy tale. If you'd like, you can send us your picture to the email in the description below. See you next time!